Welcome to Best Atari 2600 Reviews 3 by Classic Game Room, a fabulous collection of Atari 2600 reviews that I've produced over the years for games like Zaxxon and Pac-Man and Mario Brothers. Remember when Nintendo was on Atari? No? Well, I'll remind you. How about the Atari Force comic book and Infiltrate? Let's kick this collection off with the review of one of my favorite Atari 2600 games. It's the incredible, underrated Beamrider. Ride the beam right to Awesome Town. Enjoy. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room. Are you ready to ride the beam? Are you ready to play one of the greatest games on your Atari 2600? It's Beamrider. Blast off with fun and excitement. Blast off with Beamrider from 1983 for your Atari 2600. This is one of the very best Activision games that you can get from the era, and as many of you know, Activision was the master of Atari 2600 programming, and this is one of their greatest efforts. Right up there with River Raid, Enduro, and Pitfall, it's Beamrider. Which reminds me of the excellent Juno First, which is similar, but here's what you do. You're moving back and forth along the grid as these enemies attack you from beyond hyperspace or outer space or wherever you are in the Atari 2600 land. After surviving each sector, you encounter an end boss, evil mothership kind of thing that you can shoot with your torpedoes, but you've only got 3 of them, so aim carefully. Each sector gets more challenging as you encounter indestructible asteroids, new enemies, homing missiles, and all kinds of space things trying to kill you with lasers. This game could almost be described as a 2D version of Tempest. It's also very similar to that game. So Juno First combined with Tempest, yeah, sign me up, because it's good. I previously reviewed Beamrider on the Intellivision, where it also plays extremely well, and the Intellivision can generally handle more complex games. This is also on ColecoVision and the Atari computers, the 8-bit computers. It plays like an 8-bit game, but it's on the 2600 here, which is why this version of Beamrider is so darned impressive. Because this shouldn't be possible on the 2600. There's just too much going on, and it plays too well. What magic did they use to create Beamrider? What evil sorcery was Activision into back in the day? I want some. The enemy diversity makes this game a lot of fun. There's the green things that will lock onto your line on the beam or whatever and attack you. They're kind of like homing missiles. You've got UFOs flying around. The annoying things that jump back and forth across the lines and shoot at you, indestructible asteroids. Those things that look like they come straight out of Tempest, and there's even more as you keep playing. Not to mention the evil mothership. You've only got 3 torpedoes. You fire that by pushing up on your joystick or your gamepad, depending on what you're using. So play carefully because it's easy to launch that thing by mistake. And yeah, I know, that's what she said. Yeah, alien destroyed. If you collect for the Atari 2600, you absolutely must have Beamrider in your collection. It doesn't even cost all that much. It's not a rare game. It's a good game, even if the other versions are all even better than this one. It's hard to admit that the worst version of Beamrider is one of the best Atari 2600 games, because it's ambitious and it actually pulls it off. The Atari was best at simple games, it still is, but This one is just really an incredible programming effort all around, as well as terrific game design. Beamrider, one of the best on the 2600. One of the best, right up there with Juno First. In fact, this was sent to the show by the same person who donated Juno First, Andrew from Minford, Ohio. So thank you again, Andrew. You are correct. Juno First and Beamrider are two of the best on the 2600, no question. I also have this game lurking about for ColecoVision and Atari computers, so we'll watch those reviews soon. But I tip my hat, sir, to you, Beamrider, an incredible game from 1983. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Alien on the Atari 2600, one of the most unlikely movies imaginable to be turned into a Pac-Man clone. Is it good? Let's find out! In space, no one can hear you complain about a bad video game. Except this game isn't bad. Contrary to my 2000 review of Alien in The Real Game Room, I actually like this Pac-Man clone based on 1979's science fiction horror masterpiece, Ridley Scott's Alien. For the Atari 2600, if the Atari gets a Pac-Man clone based on Alien, why can't I get a Tapper clone based on The Shining? If my money's no good here, yet Lloyd keeps serving me Haunted or Not, that's my favorite bar. And I want a video game based on it. Red rum, high score, woo! If you've been watching Classic Game Room for a while, you know that this is the second time that I've reviewed Alien for the Atari 2600. And there's no way I'm going to be able to outdo the original review from 2000, which was the review during the Real Game Room review. A parody of The Real World with the Game Room from 2000. This was the game. But I'm going to play it again. It's many years later now. And I have an appreciation for Pac-Man clones that don't suck. And this doesn't suck. It doesn't have much to do with Alien, but I like that they tried. It's also better than the actual Pac-Man on Atari 2600 since they made such a complete mess out of that game. If you like Pac-Man, and you like Atari, and you like Alien, here you go. Before the Alien series became a thing, before 1986's Aliens from James Cameron, we had Alien, which was no doubt greenlit because of Star Wars. Even though it wasn't like a fun science fiction action film, that didn't stop them from making a video game based on it. I mean, what the hell, Porky's got a game, right? The fact is the Atari 2600 is very resilient. It can withstand some beer being poured on it. This is true, it has been field tested. It will not withstand sulfuric acid though, so don't shoot any aliens in the vicinity of your Atari 2600. They're nasty little creatures, which is why you're collecting their eggs in this game. To make a delicious omelet. This is also one of the only Atari games I can think of where you have a flamethrower, that's right. You can try to shoot the aliens with fire, but, and here's the brilliant thing, the flamethrower does about as much damage as the flamethrower in the movie Alien. Not Aliens, the first one, Alien. Which is to say not much, you'd be better off using harsh language. If you're surrounded by aliens, you can try to light them on fire, maybe it'll startle them and they'll change direction, maybe it won't. You really can't rely on the flamethrower in this game. You can, however, rely on the power pellets. I don't remember them from the movie, but maybe that was in the extended cut. On future Laserdisc. The real beauty of this game is that it plays way better than Pac-Man on the Atari 2600. I'm using the Sega Genesis controller. It's responsive. And that's good because the game gets really fast as you keep playing it. I love the Frogger scenes in between levels. Just try to avoid the aliens. They'll run right by you. Now, you have loads of Aliens games to choose from these days, and I'm glad to say this one is a lot better than Alien 3 on the Sega Genesis. In fact, it's probably better than Aliens Colonial Marines still. Alien Isolation's not bad though. Very different game. Get back here! As you broaden your depth of collecting for the Atari 2600, you reach a certain point where you have all the big games, and what you're left with is a bunch of oddball titles. You have a flamethrower in this game, why doesn't it kill the aliens? Some of which are truly horrible, others are surprisingly good, like this. Alien doesn't cost all that much, you can find a copy eBayably on eBay. Search with the power of Classic Game Room through the Classic Game Room website, and I've got a Classic Game Room sulfuric acid fueled shout out and thank you going all the way to Gary from Ridgewood. Wait for it. New Jersey! Thank you for sending a copy of Alien on the 2600 to the show. I lost my old one years ago. Maybe I sold it to buy a blender. No, that was the Jaguar, and I'm kind of regretting that decision these days. Flamethrowers only do so much damage against aliens, but they're really good against spaceballs. This game is excellent if you're looking for a fun Pac-Man clone on your 2600. Check it out, it's Alien from 1982. Oh, hey, what's up? Haha, sugar received. Welcome to the Classic Game Room for the review of Superman on Atari 2600 from the 1970s. Is it better than Superman 64? Do I like pancakes? Of course it is. Let's find out how much better. Superman. I think a better question is, does Superman like pancakes? Of course he does. Who doesn't like pancakes? It's the Man of Steel. On your game system of wood, it's Superman on Atari 2600 from 1979. And this is one of the least intuitive games I've ever played. When I was a kid, I could never figure out how to play Superman. I always thought it looked cool, but could never figure the damn game out until somebody invented the internet. I found a walkthrough, and now I actually know the game's objective. Superman has to build a bridge. Superman, he needs a bridge. Because he can't fly to work, he has to walk there over a bridge. At first, Superman seems like a collection of annoying sound effects with no real objective. You have to know what to do. Start the game by flying into the phone booth and changing into Clark Kent. Does anybody even know what a phone booth is anymore? Back in the day, there used to be these things called payphones. They smelled like urine and allowed you to change into your superhero costume in private. Now, the annoying sound effect accompanied by the screen flashing and Superman disappearing is me using his X-ray vision to look at the screens around me. Because this is like a super duper old school adventure game, where you have to find pieces of this bridge, arrest criminals, throw them in jail, and avoid kryptonite, all while still finding time to make out with Lois Lane. That's what that sound effect is. Hey, he is Superman after all. How do you transform back into Clark Kent? So I built the bridge, now what? He's frickin' Superman. Shouldn't he be able to do anything? You have to arrest all of the criminals, Mark, and throw them in jail, which eventually fill up, and then get privatized, and taken over by an enormous company that makes a future space jail, from which Christopher Lambert must escape, and that's the plot of Fortress 2. That has nothing at all to do with Superman. Except that Christopher Lambert is the Highlander. The Highlander was directed by the same man who directed Duran Duran's Hungry Like the Wolf and Rio. Duran Duran was formed in 1978, the same year that Superman the movie was released. You are now smarter, thanks to me. I think I've just arrested Lex Luthor. Yeah, there's this guy flying around with like a helicopter jetpack, and I thought that was the dude from Hero on the Atari 2600 and 5200, but no, it's apparently Lex Luthor, so says the internet. This is a very interesting game. Does it hold up well in the future? Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, what you're supposed to do is complete this whole process as quickly as possible, which you can see I am not doing a good job at. That sparkly thing that you saw there, that's kryptonite, and if Superman touches that, he can no longer fly, and then you have to find Lois Lane, who helps Superman get it up in the air, as in restore his power of flight. I'm disappointed that I can't arrest the helicopter. There's this helicopter flying around, but I don't know what purpose it serves other than making annoying sound effects. Now, after you've completed all this stuff, you change back into Clark Kent and victoriously walk across your damn bridge and make your way to work at the Daily Planet. And I believe you're supposed to do this as quickly as possible, which is why there's a timer on the top right of the screen. That's the game. That's Superman. You know what? I prefer Superman 2 the movie because it's awesome. Kneel before Zod! It never gets old. Yay, I'm at work. Look at what a great job I'm doing as a reporter. I just watched Superman build a bridge. Taking jobs from good contractors. Curse that Superman! I've got a classic game room shout out and thank you to send to Tim from Richmond, Kentucky. Thank you, Tim. There are those who call you Tim? So now I am back to being Clark Kent, as you can see by the hat. Because Clark Kent wears a stylish hat. I'm gonna walk over here to this bridge. Is it? Woo! The Atari 2600 was so badass, it got its own comic book. This is Atari Force issue number 4, filled with aliens, lasers, spaceships, and girls in spandex with Atari logos. Doesn't get any better than this. Wow, he's got nice hair too. You can't play it on Atari 2600, but Atari Force is required reading for all fans of Atari. Look, I think they're even playing Atari, and Dear Power Rangers, Atari Force called and left a message. Thanks for stealing our team's diversity. These 5 heroes fight for the future of Earth in the year 2005. And you would get these awesome comics with certain Atari games back in the day. This was published in 1982 by DC Comics. And the thing is, it's not just a comic book retelling of Atari's game Phoenix. It's a good comic book retelling of Atari's game Phoenix. I didn't realize that game had a plot, but clearly it does. You're fighting the Malaglon, who have strip-mined the planet and enslaved the population. And the humans launched the giant spaceship Phoenix to battle the Malaglon before they reach Earth and strip-tease it. They're quite hideous. I remember getting a couple of these back in the day and thought they were really cool. Revisiting it many years later, I think it's even cooler because it's actually a really good comic book. The art is excellent. It's non-stop lasers and explosions, which is exactly what playing Phoenix is like. It's a small comic that runs 16 pages. It's roughly the same size as a modern manga. And these would come packed in with a couple of the games. I don't remember which ones exactly. I had, I think, issue 1. And I've got issue 3 sitting here next to me. But issue 4 in particular is dynamite. It's non-stop action with good printing and paper quality, too. Not bad for marketing material, which is really what this is. This is from 1982, back in the day when Atari was in movies like Blade Runner and had full-color instruction manuals and great packaging art before the whole video game industry was sabotaged by alien invaders. I think they ended up making 5 of these. They're hyping the next issue as Galaxian. And since I have Galaxian, I wonder if I had that. I like that they translated the alien dialogue. In the end, it's pretty clever, really, because they basically show you how to play Phoenix. And give you these beautiful visuals to imagine while you're playing the game. That's one of the things I like about Atari games. There's plenty of room for imagination. This is a great collectible for fans of Atari. That was sent to the show by Rob C. from Coopersburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Rob. Does your game system of choice have its own comic book? Of course, because your game system of choice is Atari. Vanished from Earth, classic game room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room, coming to you from the Intergalactic Space Arcade, where I bring you the review of Infiltrate, yet another Atari 2600 game that's not nearly as good as the artwork on the cartridge. I love that dude's pants. They match his boots perfectly. When you fight evil, it helps to have nice hair and a smooth getup. It's Infiltrate from Apollo, released in 1982. Apollo games are kind of a mixed bag, but they frequently had really nice artwork. Check my reviews of Final Approach and Lost Luggage, and you'll see what I mean. Great art design, even if the game contained within is nothing special here, but they were really close to making a good game. This is kind of like a poor man's elevator action. It actually starts off pretty good for a few levels and then just gets way too fast too soon, but the concept is fun. They were close on this one, really close. Here's what you do. You're a super spy with a sweet leather jacket, leather pants, and matching boots. It's your mission to ride the elevators to the top of the level and collect secret documents. Then ride those same elevators down to the bottom of the level and deposit said secret documents, while avoiding the ghosts from Pac-Man. When you stand next to an elevator, it will automatically take you up or down. You can also shoot the ghosts and duck to dodge their fire. I'm not sure if they're actually supposed to be ghosts, but they sure look like it to me. It all seems perfectly good in theory until you play for a while and realize this has some serious flaws that prevent it from being a really good game on the Atari. For starters, you can't shoot from the elevators, and that gets really frustrating. It also makes no sense. That's like spies who can't fire up in Rolling Thunder. Why? But the bigger issue that I have with it is the random ghost respawning points. They'll just appear right behind you and shoot you before you can move. And that gets super annoying when you think you're making your way up to the top and it's like, yes, I just shot a ghost, and then that ghost appears right behind you. Like, oh, great, what was the point? By about the third run of the level, they just start moving way too fast. Shooting them does no good because they'll spawn right behind you, and the level never changes, so you'll frequently find yourself trapped on an elevator or murdered by ghosts you didn't know were there. That's Infiltrate. Also, it doesn't actually look like it does from the cartridge artwork. I mean, look at this. We've got a Logan's Run era super spy with a sweet laser pistol standing in front of what appears to be the face of a man trapped behind a wall of blue. A mysterious future city and radar dish lurk in the background while the man runs down the hallway, being shot at by enemies with lasers. You get a lot of points for retrieving and returning the documents, but after a while I figured out the best way to get a good score is just to hang out in a corner and shoot the ghosts, but that gets old quickly. The level design never changes, and the random respawning is infuriating. That being said, it's not terrible. Had they given the ghosts one constant respawning point, like Pac-Man for example, that would give the player a chance to know where they're coming from at least, and prepare. There's a 2-player mode, which I was hoping would be a little bit more exciting, but you just alternate back and forth. The big question is, should you run out and buy Infiltrate for your Atari 2600 collection? Well, to be honest, there's better games. And there's far worse games. This one won't set you back very much. I only paid $1 or $2 for it at a show, but that's $1 or $2 I could have also used to buy another copy of Yar's Revenge. I've only got 4. I mean, 5 would make all the difference in my life. Infiltrate is okay. If anything, you should buy the game and frame it, hang it on the wall. The artwork is great. I may dress up like that dude for Halloween next year. In fact, I may just dress like that guy. Because it's awesome. It's Infiltrate for your Atari 2600. Just admire that outfit. With leather pants like that, you can outrun lasers. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes on Atari 2600. Took 3 tries to say that with a straight face. Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes. Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes. Great title. I had no idea what to make of this game when I started to play it. I had low expectations, to be honest. Many of the Atari games released between 82 and 83 are pretty bad. Thankfully, this one is not. From 20th Century Fox Games, they actually frequently do a really good job, or did a really good job back in the day. This is a surprisingly playable, challenging, and addictive game that you'll want to add to your Atari collection if you don't own it already. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no direct relation between Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes and the movie Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but I guess we all share this common fear of tomatoes. Because they're fruit, but they don't taste like fruit. They're like vegetables, but they're not vegetables. They're somewhere in between as far as I'm concerned. They're evil. Actually, I like tomatoes, especially on a delicious Lord Carnage sandwich with cheese and basil and mayonnaise. But in this game, they're the enemy. Tomatoes are out to destroy you, and you've got to build a brick wall in front of the tomato plants on the bottom while avoiding the enemy tomatoes shooting at you and trying to run over you. It's a great game, actually. But damn, is it frustrating. Come on, give me a pink one. Give me a pink one. Leave damn yellow. Pink. If you don't build your wall fast enough, tomato plants will grow on it and break it, but the real threat is just getting run over by that super fast, scary tomato. So watch out for that thing. Also, there's those little tomatoes that shoot at you from the top of this screen. There's all kinds of things going on here, and it's amazing it works as well as it does on the Atari 2600. Because frequently, when the games got complicated, they got really bad quickly. But this one manages to hold it together. And it's like this interesting mix of Space Invaders and Breakout that just seems to work well. One more yellow one. Yes! Woo! I'm playing on the hard difficulty setting here, which is really tough. Everything's moving very fast. That's hard. Ah. And those tomatoes will kill you. Stop. Oh, come on. Give me one more. Yellow. 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 No. No. Get it. Yes! So here's what you do. You pilot your laser syringe or cannon, whatever that is, around the screen. The controls are actually really good. You obviously avoid the enemies, but shoot the colored bricks at the top of the screen. Once. That captures them. If you fire again, you lose it. So what you want to do is fire it straight down and build a wall out of them. You gotta take care of your wall because plants will grow in it and eat blocks out of it, and watch out for lasers above and below and the killer tomato coming from the left and right side of the screen. Yes! Yeah! I am the destroyer of your garden. Whoa, that thing's fast now. Woo! It's remarkably well balanced for an Atari game. I highly recommend this one. Seriously, it's very good. Oh, I need to build my wall. Safety wall. How about a classic game room? Shout out and thank you all the way down to Matthew in Lafayette, Louisiana. Thank you, Matthew, for sending Revenge of the Beefsteak tomatoes. I think the lesson to be learned here is that if you see a giant tomato chasing you, you need to build a wall in front of it. It's a good game. Recommended. Woo! Get away from me! Crazy tomatoes! Oh, that's good. Oh, no! Tomatoes have finally gotten their revenge! Ah!
Hello, this is Mark from the Classic Game Room, and this is a new series called Classic Game Room HD. What does the HD stand for? Well, certainly not high definition, because this show is a more relaxed version of Classic Game Room. This is a look back at 20 to 30 years of video gaming history. What we're looking at here is Zaxxon for the Atari 2600. When I grew up as a kid in the 80s, I had a wood-grained Atari 2600, one of the models with 6 buttons on top. Eventually I got an Atari 2600 Junior, and then a 7800, which is what I actually used to capture this footage. One of the games that I remember as a kid is Zaxxon. We all remember Zaxxon in the arcade. Zaxxon was super futuristic because it had like 3D graphics, and that made it really very different from games like Space Invaders and Pac-Man, which were purely two-dimensional. The thing with Zaxxon is that you could fly up and down in a sort of pseudo three-dimensional environment. Sadly, Zaxxon did not make a great transition to the Atari 2600. You lost the left to right sort of pseudo 3D side-scrolling game that made Zaxxon good to begin with, and we're greeted here with some kind of a horrible mixture of a vertical shooter and an attempt at a three-dimensional game where you move up and down and shoot your enemies, but since you really can't tell where your enemies are in the distance anyway with relation to the horizon or their altitude, it pretty much sucks. They get an A for effort in trying to translate it to the Atari, but a D- in execution. Valiant effort, and it's a game that you probably don't need in your collection unless you just feel better about seeing the awesome Zaxxon title and really great letterhead. They had a great logo. It's the kind of logo that you could use on the hood of your car.
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room, coming to you from the year 3084, 1,000 years after humanity is wiped out by the robots and aliens. I'm still here, broadcasting to you in the past. This is Desert Falcon for the Atari 2600. If you're listening to this in 1987, my suggestion is to wait a few years and just play Truxton. You could also just play the Atari 7800 version of this game, which is much better, even though it's really not that great of a game. It's kind of like Zaxxon with a bird, with some weird hieroglyphics and the Sphinx shooting at you or something. That's Desert Falcon. A game that's somewhat confusing to begin with, made all the more confusing when you can't make out anything on screen except the actual Falcon. So credit where credit's due, the bird itself looks nice. Everything else, not so much. What the fuck is that? That's a good question, Mark. I think it's a giant cursor surrounded by candles, although I'm not entirely sure. Man, I must need glasses because I can't make out anything in this game. What just happened? I don't know what that is. That a candle? Yes! So here's what you do. You fly through these Zaxxon style and perspective levels, and then fight the Sphinx and blow its face off. What is that? It's a power pellet. Give me the power pellet. Look, water. Oh my god. It is time to upgrade to a 7800. It's a good thing I have two of them. Actually, when I reviewed the Atari 7800 version of this game, which is way better, years ago I mistakenly said that it was an Atari 7800 exclusive. Perhaps what I meant to say was that it should have been an Atari 7800 exclusive, because this version is dead to me. Like, there's just some games that should not have been permitted on the Atari 2600, and this is one of them. I have no idea what just happened there. Admittedly, there's far worse games on the 2600. This game is just trying to do more than the VCS is capable of. And Atari fans can probably tell this is a late release. 1987 was after the NES was on the market, and the Atari 5200 had already come and gone. All joking aside, when you get the hang of it, it plays better than a 3D perspective Atari game probably should play in the first place. So it's really not that bad. You can move up and down, left and right. It's just that you can't tell what anything is, except the bird. Ran into the candle again. You can hop on the ground and pick up the little hieroglyphics for power-ups and extra points, and there's gems or apples or something that give you some extra points. I'm not entirely sure. Like, it could be a lot worse, I suppose, but then again, you could also just play the Atari 7800 version, which is infinitely better. So on that note, I'm going to send a Classic Game Room shout-out and thank you all the way to New Hampshire to Luke in Concord, New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Frankly, I always preferred the old one. What do you get with the New Hampshire? They should rename the whole state Hampshire Classic. What hit me? What was that? Why is there a brown thing on the ground? So there you have it. I would avoid this game on the 2600 unless you're a serious collector who just needs to own all the games. The Atari 7800 version is cheap, easy to find, and superior in every way. Although if you're really serious about games like this, just stick with Zaxxon. I'm so confused! I don't know what's happening. Quick, open the Stargate! Oh, god damn it,
I hit a space candle. Man, screw Desert Falcon. I want to play Swamp Pigeon. I'm gonna shoot off your wings, peck out your eyes. I don't even have a beak. I'm gonna find a way to do it. Alright, for you younger viewers out there who might not be familiar with CRT televisions and static, if you stare at the static long enough, a hand will reach out of the screen and grab your face and pull you into it. So it's pretty crazy, but that's true. Look at that chicken dance back and forth. Is everyone ready? Phoenix on the Atari 2600 from 1982. Let's rock some Phoenix! Not the band, the game. I prefer Def Leppard. And I like Phoenix a lot. It's a great Space Invaders clone. It's very cool. It's like a cross between Galaxian and Gorf, which are also Space Invaders clones. I don't know, right now I'm kind of on a Phoenix kick, but I also like Gorf a lot. I'm trying to remember the Gorf acronym. It's like Galactic Orbiting Robot Force, right? Something like that? I'm close. Your best version of Gorf is, if I'm not mistaken, the ColecoVision. But your best version of Phoenix is wherever you find Phoenix, because it's awesome. Probably the Atari 2600. I don't think it has a 7800 release, which is a shame. This would be pretty cool on the 7800. The NES clearly could not possibly handle the power of Phoenix. In fact, the Switch probably couldn't either, but your 2600 will do it with no problem at all. Haha! I have shot you, stupid space bird! This is what you get for invading! From the top of the screen! And flying back and forth in erratic ways. Oh gosh darn it. Shucks. Boss battle time. You have a shield, a temporary shield, which I really don't recommend using unless you absolutely have to. There's a little alien up there, he's just hanging out. There we go. I used the shield and was destroyed afterwards, but I wanted to show you the shield. I'm playing ahead this time. There we go. Dumbass alien. Phoenix for Atari 2600. I love the packaging art for Phoenix. That's super badass. And I also really like these silver Atari 2600 boxes. These are really nice. Comes with a comic book, and check it out. Here's the instruction manual where we get some more artwork. Ooh, look at that. That's super fun. There's a nice passage in here I want to read you. Here it is. Here, I'll zoom in. Difficulty switches. Since Phoenix is difficult enough as it is, the difficulty switches have no effect on gameplay. I never had this game when I was a kid, or at least I don't remember having it. But if I did, these sound effects would have driven my mom crazy. So I would have absolutely turned the volume all the way up. Like the bird lovers. You can shoot their wings off. Make screaming sounds. Ah! My wings!
They grow back though, so you gotta shoot them again. Man, we clearly need a who defeats here with Gorf versus Phoenix. Who defeats? Probably Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. It always wins. The original classic game room review of Phoenix was one of the super old school ones where I probably recorded on VHS, circa 2008 most likely. The funky chicken. Your laser cannon looks like a dancing chicken. Woo! Nobody likes you, alien. Actually, that's not true. I do kind of like you. You're on the Atari. How bad can you be? Haha! I used the shield properly that time. Gotta watch when they get low. You don't want to lose your chicken accidentally. Before it grows back, I need to shoot you in the face. Get over here. Yeah. Oh, come on. Look at that! It's cheating! His wings grew back! Oh, and I got shot! Oh, I'm gonna need a top 10 things about Phoenix that make me angry. Urgh. Their wings grow back. That's number 1 through 9. Number 10 is they fly in an erratic way, which makes them difficult to shoot. You should at least be wounded when I shoot off one of your wings. Scream in pain or something. Give me something here. Come on. Now, Phoenix may not be one of the better known 2600 games these days. It's really good. It's not rare because those games with the comics sold, well, they sold a lot of those. I should know this, I wrote a book on it. The other Atari Force comics came packed in with Berserk, Defender, Star Raiders, obviously Phoenix, what's the other one? But wait, there's more. You also get Atari Force. I love Atari Force. It's so awesome. This is issue 4. Here's the really talented people who made this. Like a lot of big names in the industry here from that time period. Well-made comics too. They're fighting aliens, and like in every issue of Atari Force, they find a way to like turn some kind of Atari game into a plot point. It's really good. And the characters are actually really fun too. These are really nice comics. Can't get enough Atari Force. Reminds me of Futurama. Stop eating our young! Fine, I'll just blow their wings off. A lot of the same people that worked on the Conan the Barbarian series actually worked on Atari Force. So it's got some pretty good talent. Woo! That was intense. Pretty good talent in the Atari Force comics. They knew this game was good. It is good. However, they also knew the sound effects and the music are super annoying, which they are. So if you wish to eliminate the background sounds of the bird cries, set the left difficulty switch to the A position. Action sounds will remain no matter which setting you choose. So you can eliminate the super annoying music, which is actually good because the music in this game is terrible. The art, however, is not. The Phoenix arcade game is kind of hard to find, so if you ever encounter one, if you ever find one out in the wild, push whatever kid is playing the game out of the way and make sure you play it for yourself, because it's great. If I could go back to 1981, in addition to just staying there, and crashing into alien space birds and watching The Empire Strikes Back in theater filled with cigarette smoke, one of the other things I would do after seeing Van Halen in concert is so many great things from that era. One of the other things I would do is hunt down the creators of Atari Force and ask them to change the bad guys in the Atari Force comic books from aliens to Nintendo. That would be the best comic book ever made. Atari Force versus the nefarious, evil Nintendo company trying to take over the world with colorful video games that don't play as good as Atari. And Commander Champion could like punch out Mario. And Prez could drop kick Princess Peach. And the rest of them, whose names I forget, could all battle, you know, Donkey Kong and the other one. Oh no! I can't write a comic book in 1981 and play Phoenix at the same time. It's like walking and chewing gum.
Long before the infamous Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo Entertainment System, we had Mario Brothers for the Atari 2600. This game is copyright 1983. This isn't the first appearance of Mario. He actually was in Nintendo's Donkey Kong, but this is the first Mario game, and the first appearance of Luigi. But this is the first time that I remember seeing everyone's favorite Italian plumber on screen. And I remembered this game when Super Mario Brothers came out, because I was a big fan of Super Mario Brothers, because who wasn't? Which we'll get into later on Classic Game Room HD. But Mario Brothers is not nearly as well known. Mario, however you'd like to pronounce it. I loved this game when I was a kid, and this game is still a lot of fun to play today. And you can see why Nintendo is still quite a successful company today. They put out some nice games early on, and had some great characters, like Mario. And even with the rudimentary Atari graphics, you can still make out his little mustache and his sideburns. This game is really fun and challenging. The objective is to hit the little animals that are coming out of the sewer pipes from underneath. That knocks them upside down like the turtles, and then you jump up there and you collect them, and then a coin drops out of the pipes. So it makes absolutely no sense, but it's a lot of fun to play. As the game progresses, the animals change a bit. You have crabs that take 2 hits to knock upside down. You have bugs that jump up and down. You have ice monster things. This game has a great 2-player mode where you can play against a friend and you can use strategy to try to kill each other or collect as many points as possible while inflicting damage upon each other. It's just a great game. This is one I'd like to see remade for the Xbox Live Arcade. So everybody talks about the Super Mario Brothers. Don't forget the original Mario.
Welcome to Classic Game Room, coming to you from the Intergalactic Space Arcade. How about some crop dusting and biplane action? This is Barnstorming on the Atari 2600 from Activision.
Stupid birds, move!
Barnstorming! What a great game. Right up there with cow tipping, which I've never done, by the way, which is kind of odd considering I grew up in Pennsylvania. It's kind of like the national pastime. Anyway, I did a mini review of this game years ago, back before I figured out how I was going to produce Classic Game Room, and motivated by my Activision catalog review, I decided that Barnstorming deserves a full review because it's awesome. You're flying through barns and dodging birds that are indestructible. This game rules. Released in 1982 from Activision for the Atari 2600, this is a must-have game. For everybody ever, anywhere, you need Barnstorming. I'm playing this with my priceless Atari 7800 gamepad to get the most out of the controls. Your objective in Barnstorming is simple. Fly through a specified number of barns as quickly as possible. Period. What a great objective. There's 4 modes of gameplay. The first mode, you fly through 10 barns and then 15, and it goes all the way up to 25. And if you're watching these reviews in the future, this period here in 2013, watch them in sequence and you should just see the entire studio built around the actual filming.
Yes, 34, 52. Thanks to all of you, I have broken my record, which is surely a world record by now. Right?
Sure, Mark. Thanks to the digital clock, you can get an OCD complex trying to break fractions of seconds in Barnstorming, which is pretty much what this game is all about. That's why the longer levels are better. Here's a close-up of the biplane in Barnstorming, which in traditional Activision programming fashion is brilliant. They took something so simple and made it stand on its head. Activision knew how to make great Atari games.
Woo, 53.65 with 1 crash. It's not too bad. The best way to enjoy the great outdoors is indoors on your Atari 2600. Just look at this. It's nature. We have green fields and a beautiful sunset. Why bother going outside when you can enjoy all of this at home? And crash into birds with airplanes. Out of my way.
You know, the fact is, I'm not a good actor. My range is sarcasm and extreme sarcasm. So when you see me having fun like this, it's real.
52.24 with no crashes, but a few dead birds. Sorry, birds. You got in my way.
You know, if this game was released today, it would have zombie birds. Somebody had to say it, and it was me. Barnstorming is one of the must-have Atari 2600 games. It's super cheap, it's easy to find, and it's tons of fun. I bought mine used, and I still don't know who Malin is. Why is his name on my game cartridge? Screw you, Malin.
I question this game's realism, because if I flew into birds with that airplane, those birds would be destroyed. It's as if I'm playing an Atari. There we go. It's classic game room time, and I'm bringing you the review of Tutankham. This game on the Atari 2600. There's the title.
This is Tutankham, I think that's how you pronounce it, which apparently was originally a 1982 arcade game from Konami. I didn't even realize that until I did some research prior to recording this, which may explain why it's actually quite a fun game. It just doesn't look very good on the Atari 2600. I've never actually seen the arcade machine, but this one takes a bit of imagination to play on our beloved VCS. This is like a maze shooter exploration game where you play as somebody robbing cave-dwelling nasty creatures of their priceless treasure, maybe?
Woo! What happened?
Burger King crown, check. Perhaps we're just robbing the pyramids. You know, it really doesn't matter. I think we're spelunking. Is this spelunking? Has anyone ever been spelunking? I've never been spelunking. You know what this reminds me of is Amadar on the Atari 2600, which I think was also originally from Konami. It looked terrible.
But it's actually a really fun game, and I think that one is also from Parker Brothers. Like this. So once you figure out what you're looking at, Tutankham is quite fun. You've got the little dude with the hat and the gun. So it's like Indiana Jones, and then there's obviously creatures which are spawning from the blocks, but you just gotta figure out which blocks are bad and which blocks are good.
That's right, baby. I'm like Han Solo in a cavern.
And make sure to collect the thing that may or may not resemble a key, because without that you can't leave the maze. Got it? Good.
I have saved priceless pieces of treasure from snakes and spiders, who surely would have pawned it off on eBay.
Have fun spelunking and getting eaten by snakes. And whatever that thing is, I think there's also rats. Maybe badgers. I don't know what that thing is supposed to be. It's like a mutant moth or a heart monster or something. But what you do on each level is the same. Collect the key, collect the treasure, shoot the enemies, and escape. Repeat as necessary.
Yeah! Woohoo! That victory music is awesome. Look, a trident! A trident! Yes! Ooh, there's a ring! To match my trident. I've laser electrocuted the snake. Except now I'm out of laser electrocution things. What do I do? What would Indiana Jones do?
Throw up after watching the Crystal Skull. Now don't forget that you have a laser electrocution thing. Hold the button and push up. You'll electrocute everything in the maze except yourself, because you're wearing rubber sneakers.
Woo! I am master of spelunking. Yes! That's how we do it. Next cave. Come on, animals. I will rob you blind. I have taken your beaver crown.
You see, it's not a great game from the aesthetic standpoint, but this is one of the things that many of us like about Atari games. They force you to use your imagination.
This is definitely a trident. Or an afro pick, one or the other. Both good.
It doesn't look like Uncharted 4. Then again, it doesn't really look like much of anything.
I will take your fine upholstery. And your jewels. And your lunch. No! I've been eaten by a... I don't know what that was. Woo!
Tutankham! Well, it's not one of the greatest games on the Atari 2600. It's something different, and it's dirt cheap. Why not give it a try? I mean, how many games let you laser electrocute underground treasure monkeys? That's gotta be worth something.
Ah! Stabbed in the butt again.
This horrible abomination on screen is Pac-Man for the Atari 2600. And I have a hard time actually thinking of a worse game for the Atari. And what makes it all the more painful is that Pac-Man is such a great game to begin with. And just a few years later, they did put Ms. Pac-Man out for the Atari 2600, which is such a dramatic improvement. My biggest complaint about this game, aside from the obvious fact that it just looks like shit, is the fact that when you eat a power pellet, you can't even see if the ghosts are blinking. So how are you supposed to time your attack if you don't know when they're going to stop blinking and then hurt you? You know how to play Pac-Man. You eat the power pellets, the ghosts turn blue normally, blink, run away from you, and you got to eat them before the time runs out. Well, that they've taken that enjoyment out of this game. You can barely see that they're different colors, but you certainly cannot tell when they're going to stop blinking, and you just have to sort of take your chances. But the odds are you're not going to want to play this game for more than 30 seconds anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now, they must have sold billions of copies of Pac-Man for the Atari, because in my collection I somehow ended up with 5 of them, and I was never even trying to get this game. The only redeeming thing that Pac-Man for the Atari did was to impregnate Ms. Pac-Man in the Atari 7800 and create Pac-Man Jr. This game is god-awful.
Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I'm kicking off Atari Week with the review of Eggomania on Atari 2600. Lego my Eggomania. I don't actually think this has anything to do with the delicious waffles, but it does feature a disco space chicken that drops eggs on you, and you need eggs to make waffles, so maybe it does. Lego Eggomania. I love games that properly utilize the Atari 2600 paddle controllers. They're great controllers. You swivel back and forth and fire. Outstanding for games like Super Breakout, Demons to Diamonds, and this one, less common, Eggomania. A game I've never heard of until this copy arrived from Scotland, where you play as a blue frog with a plate on his head catching eggs dropped by a disco space chicken. Although the cartridge art makes it look like a blue bear, I think it's a frog. Why not? After each round, you can then shoot the eggs back at him for additional points and clear off some of the yolk, which you'll soon be drowning in. Kind of a creepy game if you think about it. Drowning a frog in eggs. Like, what did that frog do to you? Like a lot of arcade-style games, Eggomania starts off really easy and then becomes excruciatingly difficult. You'll need to play this game very aggressively with the paddle controller and be spot on with your aim. There's no margin for error. Disco space chickens take no prisoners. When the game picks up speed, it actually feels like you're playing Guitar Hero on the Atari, like it's dropping punch cards at you. And you're going to make mistakes. You have to hit that chicken in between each round to undo some of the damage, which is much harder than it looks. I still haven't figured out the hit detection. Just shoot and try to hit it. As you keep playing, each egg becomes worth more and more points, so the secret to a big score is just staying alive. Breaking 20,000 is no easy task. And while there's a lot of games like this on the Atari 2600, Eggomania does a good job. I mean, how many games have disco space chickens? You can't lose with that. And I know what you're thinking. Mark, seriously? Do chicken nuggets taste better if they're made from disco space chickens? You know it! Oh no, your frog is gonna drown in eggs! Or at least I hope that's what that is. This game is pretty fun. This was sent to the show by Stuart in Glasgow, Scotland. Scotland, I love Scotland. I have Scotland in my blood and Scottish beer in the fridge. So thank you again, Stuart, while you probably won't find this one just lurking about somewhere. If you do, it's worth picking up. This plays extremely well with the paddle controllers. You'll want good paddle controllers for this because precision is important and the music is great too, so rock it on giant speakers. stupid demented chicken.
Eggomania from 1982 by US Games. I have a bunch of US games around here, including Squeezebox, which Stuart also sent to the show. So if you like paddle controller games on the Atari, get this one. Disco Space Chickens Need to Be Destroyed by frogs with plates on their head.
Just my plate is sticking up above the yolk, if that's what that is.
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything.
That's right, bitch. It's Chuck Norris. Oh!
So there's this scene in Code of Silence where Chuck Norris walks into a bar and there's a Frenzy arcade machine behind him. Well, there's a Frenzy arcade machine behind me, and I'm holding a Chuck Norris video game for the Atari. So it's like Chuck Norris Day in outer space. Happy Chuck Norris Day.
Yeah, what direction should I take? We'll go. Whoa, watch your head, Chuck.
Whoa! How does Chuck Norris have his own video game, yet Jean-Claude Van Damme does not?
You do not defeat Chuck Norris in his own video game. Chuck Norris defeats you.
As part of a Zonox Double Ender game cartridge for Atari 2600,
Oh, snap!
released in 1983, this is Chuck Norris Superkicks. Starring martial arts superstar, infomercial specialist, and Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris. As you can clearly tell by the blonde hair, that's Chuck Norris.
Oh, did you see? I jumped over his head and kicked him. Yeah! I'm like Luke Skywalker with a beard.
Needless to say, I've had a great time playing this game. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Chuck Norris. And my favorite Chuck Norris movie is either Missing in Action 1, Missing in Action 2, Code of Silence, Delta Force, Invasion USA, Way of the Dragon, The Octagon.
Oh, right, yes.
Oh, hell, they're all my favorite, except maybe Sidekicks. But this game is actually way better than I expected, because I expected it to be god-awful. Instead, I found it to be an entertaining and extremely ambitious Atari 2600 game.
I have made it to the dojo or whatever.
What you do is simple. You kick ass as Chuck Norris because that's what Chuck Norris does.
Rambo is a bitch compared to Chuck Norris.
That's really an unfair comparison. So you go on this adventure as Chuck Norris, even though the real Chuck Norris would use either a fan boat or a helicopter to get there. But this is like video game Chuck Norris.
This is like 1,000 times better than Karateka.
And he encounters bad guys on these paths. And you have to choose paths, one of which will be blocked by a tree, which is like kryptonite for Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris cannot defeat a tree in his way, or he can't walk around it or climb over it either.
Purple shirt, brown slacks. You do not defeat Chuck Norris while wearing slacks. Let's be clear about that. What? There's a tree there too? Damn it. What's the deal? Like, Chuck Norris could easily kick down a tree. Why is a tree an obstacle for Chuck Norris? This is the man who broke the Berlin Wall. Chuck Norris fights for freedom.
So it's pretty tricky. You never know where this damn tree is going to be, and the fighting takes time to kick everyone's ass properly. You push up on the Atari controller and push the button to punch. You push down and button to kick, and you can even jump over people somehow and like kick them in the back of the head or something. It's great. While it's not an amazing game, actually it kind of is. It's really impressive for an Atari 2600 release. Very complicated, and it plays surprisingly well. For an action-packed Atari game like this, check out the backgrounds, and you want to avoid the throwing stars when you're battling the bad guys. Chuck Norris is easily defeated by a throwing star for some strange reason. After you make it through each section of the path, Chuck Norris gets some bonus points, added time, and a new colored belt.
Chuck Norris continues. I now have a green belt.
And punching and kicking people is tricky. It's like you have to choose one or the other depending on the bad guy you're fighting, and it's not clear until you start fighting them. I mean, I guess this is like real martial arts. Like Chuck Norris probably consulted in the making of this game. I'm sure he had a lot to do with this. It's very accurate.
There's no way you would still be alive after being punched by Chuck Norris.
Check out the candle effects. Castlevania totally ripped this game off. It's pretty cool. Chuck Norris, Superkicks.
Go!
Just one part of this Zonox Double Ender sent to the show by Matt from Englewood, Ohio. Thank you, Matt.
Kick that dude's head.
This game is cool.
Come on, Chuck, channel some Van Damme here. We gotta get through this level.
I'll have to review the other game, Artillery Duel, separately. There's no way it can possibly compete with Chuck Norris. Superkicks on Atari 2600.
Who would win this battle? Chuck Norris or RoboCop? That would be a draw, and you know it.
From 1983, this is Kangaroo for the Atari 2600, the video computer system version of the 1982 arcade game, which is very similar to Nintendo's Donkey Kong, but it has a kangaroo! And kangaroos make everything better. Even stew. That was obnoxious. I apologize to all kangaroos listening. You've got to have mad respect for any animals that can wear boxing gloves and punch out monkeys. Kangaroos, and they have pockets, and shoes named after them, which also have pockets for quarters that you could use to play Kangaroo in the arcade, but quarters won't help you on the Atari. You just have to press start or reset, as the case would be. Anyway, I'm not really sure of the storyline, but it seems like you're trying to climb the ladders to rescue a little kangaroo. Presumably your son, daughter, precious robot kangaroo. I don't know. This is a jacket find video game cartridge. That's right, I found it in a jacket. So I was cleaning out closets in my house one day, and we found this game cartridge in a jacket that was about to go to Goodwill. I hadn't worn it in about 12 years. I have no idea why there was a Kangaroo video game cartridge in an old jacket. Presumably because we were going to review it on the original Classic Game Room show back in 2000. The dates would line up for that. But for whatever reason, that jacket was retired and shoved into the back of a closet forever. And through a move, I have no idea how this happened. But we have the game cartridge saved before it went to Goodwill. The jacket's gone. Kangaroo lives forever. Oh, Susanna, there's a kangaroo coming for you. Great song. I previously reviewed Kangaroo for the Atari 5200. It's actually one of the better Atari 5200 games available. It's been a while since I've played it, but this is obviously a more condensed version. But still a competent Atari 2600 game. In fact, it's pretty good. But it could really use two buttons. You use the one button on the Atari controller to punch, and you push up to jump. So jumping over the platforms can be tricky. In fact, that's where I lose this game horribly. You've got to be very precise with your jumping. Take that, monkey. There's a variety of different ways to score points and lots of different things trying to kill you. Watch out for the block bouncing from the ceiling. The objective is simple: climb the ladders and get out of there as quickly as possible before the bonus runs out. You can punch monkeys for points, collect fruit, and then ring the bell, which causes Big Ben to chime. That then regenerates fruit as fruit worth more points. So you can attempt to go back for more expensive fruit or just escape before your bonus depletes. I think that thing's a pineapple. It's worth 800 points. I'm going to collect that and then get out of here. I played a number of games for this review, and they all ended up pretty much with the same score. Kangaroo is tricky, but a lot of fun. If you collect for the Atari 2600, I'll definitely recommend Kangaroo. It doesn't look great, but it looks good enough to get the job done, and I think this is a solid programming effort for the Atari 2600. I just flattened my Kangaroo. Even during editing here, it looks like I should have made that jump. Come on, he's a kangaroo. Can't he jump higher than that? It's Kangaroo, highly recommended for the Atari 2600. Boo! Happy Halloween. It's Haunted House! On the Atari 2600, I absolutely hated this game as a kid. Probably because I didn't understand it. Now that I do, I can't say that I'm terribly fond of it, but I do respect its creativity. Even though it's really not that scary, E.T. is far more terrifying. I have memories of this game and E.T. together because my friend back in the day had them both. We didn't like either of them. But now that I've actually read the instructions, Haunted House is actually an interesting, well-designed game, given the limitations of the Atari, whereas E.T. is a giant pile of crap. So I hated E.T. before it was cool to hate E.T. Gouged in the eyeballs by a bat again. Will he ever learn? Here's what you do in Haunted House. You run around in the dark looking for 3 pieces of an urn that you assemble and then bring to the entrance of this mansion, and I guess you're scored for that somehow, depending on how many matches you use. In that previous game I used 5 matches, and this one I'm up to 11 because I can't find the damned urn, but I can run through the ghosts because I've found the magic scepter. But in order to pick up the pieces of the urn, I must put down the magic scepter, which makes me vulnerable to attack by ghosts and spiders and bats. Pretty cool, huh? This is back in the days when you had to use imagination when playing your video games. Before games looked better than real life, they looked like this. There's 4 different levels to this mansion. Each one is color-coded. The first level is blue, and sometimes you'll get lucky and all of the urn pieces are on the first floor. Hooray! I win. Great sound effects, even though I think that's the same sound as in Yar's Revenge. No complaints there, of course. There's 9 different difficulty settings in Haunted House, and it does get a bit spooky when you turn off the walls or make the walls invisible, because then you're surrounded by a real feeling of dread. Especially when you run into a locked room that you can't get out of and there's ghosts attacking you. Like, that sucks. Good times. You know, there's a lot of fairly abstract games on the Atari where developers back in the day were trying new and interesting things. Sometimes they didn't work. And I think I initially thought this was more of an abstract game than it is. It's really not that difficult to understand if you actually read the instructions and play it a few times. That being said, I'm not really sure I see the point either. There's a couple different house layouts. You can add locked doors and more enemies and stuff. And it definitely gets trickier when you have to put down the key to pick up the piece of the urn. But ultimately, I think I'd rather play something like Yar's Revenge. Had I understood this one back in 1981 or 82, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. Because it does a good job taking you somewhere spooky using your imagination. And the game is tricky. Personally, I prefer more of the arcade-style games. I also remember my friend had The Empire Strikes Back, so it was way more fun to blow the crap out of AT-ATs than try to figure out Haunted House. I had very little patience for this. If you want to add this one to your collection, it's really easy to find and super cheap to collect.
these days. And I've got a classic game room shout out and thank you going all the way up to Buffalo, New York to my man Ben in Buffalo. Thank you, Ben. It may not have been obvious, but there's stairs on the tops and, depending on which level it is, the sides that take you from floor to floor. So thanks again, Ben, for sending this to the show. It was fun to figure out Haunted House after all these years, but I'd still rather be blowing up AT-ATs.
Pac-Man played properly in black and white. That's right. Unlike your newfangled fancy game systems with 4K and Netflix built in, the Atari 2600 has a black and white selector switch so that we can take it back to 1980 when not everybody had color TVs. Like my grandparents. Everyone gather around the fireplace, kids. Crazy Uncle Mark's gonna tell a story about black and white TVs. Maybe I told this one before, I don't remember, but I'm gonna tell it again anyway, so deal with it. Alright, the year is like 1981, 82, somewhere in there. I'm at my grandparents' house with my dad, and we're watching On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the Bond film, one of the best Bond films. And there's this great chase scene right in the middle of the film. And when they're skiing down the mountain, and Bond is like beating up the bad guys or whatever. And there's this one part of the movie, one part of the chase scene when Bond hits the bad guy off a jump or something, and he flies into this huge snowblower machine. And he gets ground up and spit out the other side in snow. We're watching this in black and white. My dad goes, as a matter of fact, you know, in color that snow is red. You see, you had to use your imagination, or at least experience previously seeing the film in color, to know that. Black and white. Yes, everything is simpler on a black and white TV. Look who it is! It's Pac-Man! Hey Pac-Man, what do you think of the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man? It's better than Super Mario Brothers! No way! Now I've done it. The black and white selector switch is stuck. Here I was going to talk about how the Atari never breaks. Oh, come on. I think the problem here is I spilled a beer on this like 20 years ago. There we go. Okay. As I was saying, the Atari is indestructible. It can withstand beers being spilled on it 20 years ago. And wait, no, holy crap. Did I say 20 years ago? It's more like 30 years ago. Never mind. It was old then. Is everyone ready for some good times? and bad music. Pac-Man on Atari 2600. This game is very difficult to film. I actually shot an entire review in 4K, but oh no! I'm not paying attention. Let me tell my story. I shot an entire review in 4K, but the frame rate was not high enough to capture the 4 ghosts that are actually kind of hard to see in real life with, you know, real human eyes. But I decided to reshoot the whole thing in 60 frames a second, so I had to run out and buy a new memory card just for you, so that you could be tormented by Pac-Man on Atari 2600. Actually, let me take that back. It's not a good version of Pac-Man, but it's kind of fun. Primarily because it's on the Atari, which is always fun, and it brings back memories of when I played this game as a kid. My friend had it. Like, I didn't have an Atari 2600 right away. I had to eventually talk my parents into getting me one, but that was like 1986 or something. So like in 81, 82, I had a friend who had an Atari 2600. I go over to his house and we play this version of Pac-Man. And I was always like, why does it sound like Pac-Man is eating ghosts underwater? It's just got the weirdest sounds. Like, you know, now it's the future. I can't say they're the worst sounds. I mean, the opening song is pretty awful, but it's just a really kind of a weird reimagining of Pac-Man. I kind of like it. I hate to admit that, but I do. I'm Mark in his crazy old man phase is kind of digging Pac-Man on the 2600. This version of it here is a little slow, you know, like all the Atari games, for those of you, who know this stuff. There's a bunch of, like most of the Atari games, there's a bunch of game options. And option 6 is Fast Pac-Man, Fast Ghosts. So it's kind of like Ms. Pac-Man sped up, except not as good. Because it's Pac-Man on the Atari. I think if I put some delay on the video wafers, they'll sound pretty cool. Yeah, that was also my favorite scene of Return of the Jedi. She looks great.